DreAllDay.com.
The Mental Handbook, your guidebook to building your bulletproof mindset for all of life. DreAllDay.com. Dre Baldwin, DreAllDay.com. Today we're talking about things that you already know. You ever tell somebody something and they be like, I already know that. Or somebody come to you and they ask you for some information, but they like, wait, before you give me information, let me tell you what I already know. Or you say something and somebody's like, well, I already knew that. You're not saying anything new. I already had that information. I want to talk to you about the things that you already know in life. It's important that we talk about this because sometimes people seem to think that because they already know something, quote unquote, that means that there's no value in that information, or they don't need to pay attention to it, or they need something new, especially these days. Because somebody will be like, I have a video on YouTube or something that has some information talking about a certain topic, and somebody will say, well, this is an old video, it's from 5 years ago, it's from 3 years ago, it's from 3 weeks ago. Why don't you make a new video? Why don't you make an updated video? It's old. Like, look, the information is still the information. Whether I say it twice, if I say it 10 times, I say it 100 times, I make a new video every day saying the exact same thing. The information is still the same. Just because it's a new video doesn't mean the information has changed at all. Sometimes people tend to not value something that seems to either they already know or has already existed. And let me explain to you why that may be getting you in trouble. Number one thing you got to understand, just because you know something, no, quote unquote, meaning you read it or you watched it or you heard about it or you experienced it or you've been through it or you saw it or your man went through it or whatever the situation is, doesn't mean you know anything. Seeing, hearing, watching something, even experiencing something doesn't necessarily mean that you know something. You want me to tell you how you know that you actually know something? This is the only way to know that you actually know something is when you can teach it to somebody else. You don't know anything until you can teach it to somebody else. Somebody had came to me and said, well, I was watching your video on trying out for the D-League, and it's a really old video. I'm like, dude, have you ever tried out for the D-League? Can you make a video about trying out for the D-League? If the answer is no and no, then no matter how old that video is, it could be 20 years old, you can't teach it to anybody else. You need that information. You need to value anything that you cannot teach yourself and you don't know it. When you start teaching it to other people and people are coming to you, asking for that knowledge, asking for that information, asking for that help, that's when you know something. Until then, you don't know a damn thing. And I don't care what the topic is. Point number 2, and this is doing things and teaching things. Going through it and being able to teach it, that's the key to knowing that you actually know something. Number 2, how many times in life, just ask yourself this question, how many times in life do you have to tell somebody the same thing over and over and over and over again until they actually get it and do something with that information? How many times you got to repeat the same thing to somebody before they actually, oh, all right, now I understand. Now I'm going to do what you told me to do. How many times do you need to be told the same thing over and over and over again before you actually do something with that information, with that knowledge, with that subject, that suggestion, whatever it happens to be? When you were growing up, how many times did you practice tying your shoes before you can do it now without even thinking about it? How many times in kindergarten did you say the ABCs in class until you got to the point that now you can put letters together, make words. You can hear somebody else say words and you know exactly what they're saying and understand it and come up with your own sentences and paragraphs and books. How many times you had to go through it over and over and over again until you got it down so perfect? That's the way things work in life. You got to do the same thing over and over. So just because you heard it, read it, watched it, saw it before, doesn't mean it's not useful. Doesn't mean that you don't need it. It doesn't mean you don't need to read it, watch it, hear it, and go through it again. How you get good at basketball? You don't do a layup one time and then say, oh, well, I already did that layup. Or that's a layup is old. I did that 3 years ago. You don't do that. You keep doing it because you got to keep doing it to maintain the skill, to maintain the muscle memory, the mind memory of doing things. You got to do them over and over and over again. There's never a point where you can say, all right, well, I already know that, or I already did that, or I already been through that. I don't need to ever deal with it ever again. That makes no sense whatsoever. You wouldn't do it in sports. You wouldn't do it in business. Why would you do it when it comes to your knowledge and when it comes to your personal development? Number 3, in business, in the marketing world, they say that it takes up to 7 exposures or a minimum of 7 exposures to an idea or a topic or a product before a person actually, first of all, even remembers that the product exists. How many times you watch the same commercial over and over again before you could remember the commercial or remember what was funny about it or who was in it. You don't even remember what the product was. You ever had that happen where you remember the commercial or what they were talking about or what happened, but you don't even know what they were advertising because you only remember one part of it. You don't even remember all of it. You got to see it over and over and over again until you actually get what they want you to get out of it. And the world today, what I heard recently, was that it's not 7 times that somebody needs to be exposed to remember something. Now it's up to 16 times because we got so many different messages bombarding us every day. Videos like this one, podcasts, blogs, social media, everybody's putting the message out there. We got to hear things more than twice as much as we used to have to, simply because there's so much competition for our attention and our focus on a day-to-day basis. So you think because you read something once, you know it. You think because you watched a 10-minute YouTube video on a topic, you don't need that information anymore. You think you got everything you need? Okay, well, go teach it. If you ain't teaching it, you don't know it. You got to get it over and over and over and over again in order to really get something out of that information. Number 4, one time of doing something, I kind of already said this, is not enough. You got to be reminded over and over of everything. Brushing your teeth, tying your shoes, what else? Doing your own laundry, doing the ABCs, putting words together, reading and writing. How much did you have to practice? When you were a baby, how many times did you try to stand up? How many times did you try to roll over? Then you try to crawl, then you try to stand up, then you try to walk, then you try to run. You had to learn how to do all these things. You had to have training wheels on your bike for a couple months before you can take the training wheels off. You got to do things over and over. Already knowing something means that you're cutting yourself off from things that you think you have the information on, but you can't teach it. See, the stuff that I already know is the stuff that I can put on this camera and teach. The stuff I can write in books, stuff I can say on the stage, stuff I can teach to a coaching or consulting client, the stuff that I can put in an online course. That's how I know. I know that I know it because I can teach it to another person. If you can't teach it, you don't know it. And if you ain't teaching anything to anybody, you don't know anything. Get your knowledge up. Work on your game. DreAllDay.com.